available to you, because if this morning's webinar is any indication of what's to come, there's so much information, you can't absorb it all the first time. As a matter of fact, I see somebody who's actually logged on again today. So we will make it available on the NMA website by tomorrow. I want to introduce our facilitator, a longtime friend of NMA, Dee Thomas, who I first got to know when she was at Boeing in Seal Beach, California. She was a trainer for the Boeing company in learning, training, and development, and also a Boeing Leadership Center facilitator. She has her BA from the University of California, Irvine in Russian languages, and she has an MS from Chapman University in Human Resource Management. She also has, as you'll see, obviously, a California teaching credential, also from UC Irvine. Dee actually began her career in HR and has worked for several companies, including American Zettler Electronics, Unisys, and Cal State San Bernardino, where she was assistant personnel director, primarily managing employee relations and training. She just recently retired from the Boeing company. She's written many courses, including effective communication skills, conflict management, interviewing for managers. She also developed Controlling Your Emotions with a marriage and family counselor to address the need for anger management in the workplace. To me, probably as interesting as anything, she was recently a trainer in Boeing's threat management arena, helping to identify and mitigate potentially dangerous behaviors in the workplace. Additionally, she provided coaching for management, assessed team effectiveness, and planned off-site events. So, without further ado, because she's got lots to share with you, I'm going to mute myself and turn everything over to our presenter, Dee Thomas. Dee, take it away.
Thank you, Steve. Hello, everybody. Yes, I'm on the West Coast over here in California, and we do have a lot to go over. So we're going to talk about resume writing and the importance of results orientation. So we have a few objectives that we're going to cover today. I would really want you to understand how to best market your skills, because you are marketing the most important commodity that you are ever going to market, and that's yourselves. I want you to understand how to select categories in the most favorable sequence. So, excuse me, you're going to hear me talking about categories and how you lead from strength. So you're always going to have your name and contact information at the top of the page. And by the way, you can have 2 pages, but no more than 2 pages. And whatever you put as contact information on page 1, you also put on page 2. Then I will talk about you have an objective, but after that, you're going to select your categories, and you have to each individually determine which category is the most impressive that I want people to see first. What do I want people to see second? So each one of you could have a different looking resume because you have selected categories according to your strengths. We're going to understand the use of action verbs. A lot of people have on their resumes duties included and responsibilities were. That's passive voice in English. There's no activity there. There's no energy or enthusiasm in that, so I don't want you to write that, so we'll talk about that. And I'd like you to create results-oriented accomplishments, because this is going to be about you and how you made a difference in your job, how you helped your company make money, save money, and avoid costs, which is why companies are in business. So as I mentioned, you want your name and contact information at the top. You can have 2 pages, so exactly what you put on page 1, you put on page 2 for contact info. And then I do like an objective. A lot of people will tell you that you should have a summary. I don't agree with that. I like a summary that could be on a cover page. And the reason I don't like summaries is that everybody says the same thing. Everybody says that they're good communicators, both oral and written. They say that they are good team players, that they have a lot of initiative. And that just makes you sound like everyone in the world. And I don't want you to sound like everyone in the world. I want you to sound distinctive. And I want it to be based upon what you can do for a future company. So it says based on language in the requisition. So as you look at your requisition and what are the duties needed, you want to figure out, okay, in my background, is it more impressive to put career progression first based upon my matching the terms of the rec, or do I want to put my education first because they're going to be impressed with that? So some other careers are computer expertise, the military, patents and publications, professional affiliations, security clearance, which I'm going to come back to in a minute, and special skills, which normally for me is if you are bilingual or trilingual, or you are able to speak foreign languages, that could be a special skill. But special skills could also be consulting or photography, construction, depending upon what you have done in your background that you want people to know about that may feed into that job requisition. I want to come back to military for a second. If you have served in the military, put a military category. It does not promise you that you will get an interview or a job, but what it does tell me is that I have to be very careful as I scrutinize your resume to make sure that there's a reason that I can include you. But if you don't have a military category, I don't know to do that. So it's very important to have one, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation. Let's see. Computer expertise as a category, you might call it expertise if there's just not much you don't know about computers. You can call it computer proficiency if you know a lot, but maybe there's not everything that you know. And some of us, like myself, I do not get to have a computer expertise category because I am far from it. But under my education category, I can list that I have had some computer classes. So these are some of the categories. Now there's a couple that I left out, and one of them is community service and the other is hobbies. It may be, if you have room, that you could put either a hobbies or community service category, but I don't want those categories at the expense of anything else. So you're going to hear a lot of people tell you how to write a resume. And I want to tell you not only what I think you should put on a resume, but why, because I really want you to understand how to market yourselves. And I hope at some point if somebody says, well, do this, your response is going to be, well, Dee said no. That was my first joke. So as I mentioned, a resume can be 2 pages, but no more. And then you have basically about 28 seconds to capture the reader's attention with your resume. So that's why we want to have a very succinct and cut to the chase resume. This resume has to be perfect. You can have no mistakes, because if you have a mistake on your resume, you have a mistake on the most important marketing tool that tells me about you. If you allow a mistake, I'm going to think, oh, well, you will allow mistakes as you do your job, and I don't want that. So the margins have to be lined up perfectly. You have to have spelling perfect. The punctuation has to be perfect. And I'm going to put you in a verb format, so I don't want any nouns creeping in because I've got you in verb format. And by the way, there are no full sentences on a resume. As I have crafted my resume, I happen to use Times New Roman font in 12 point. A lot of people like Arial just because they do. The smallest font I would suggest is 11 point. I think 10 is a little too small, although some people use 10 because they've got to cram a lot of information on 2 pages. I'm going to tell you, try to use 11 and edit. My page settings are at 0.7 to the left and the right and 0.7 top to bottom. So I want a little bit of a margin, but I want to maximize my space. And some of you will have a lot of information, and I want you to maximize your space. So there's 2 types of resumes, and I'm going to be focusing on the chronological resume because that concentrates on your job history and length of time at each employer. When you apply for a job where you are an unknown commodity, they have never met you, they don't know a thing about you, and all it is a piece of paper, then the chronological resume denotes your job stability. And if I'm someone looking to hire someone, the thing that I care about is job stability. And that's the only thing that I'm going to be able to tell on your resume is that. I do not care personally for functional resumes. A functional resume would be where you talk about what you are able to do functionally. So maybe you have background in finance or economics and you talk about what you can do in that category. You also have some human resources functions that you've performed, so you tell about that. Maybe you were in purchasing or logistics. So you'll tell me what your capabilities are there. The reason that I don't like functional is because it gets away from the stability of the chronology of your work history. And because I personally, for the last 17 years, have worked with people who have been incarcerated and they might have done a lot of jail time, they don't get to have a chronological resume because their history is too sketchy. So they use functional resumes. And I know that, so I know how much that it can hide. So I'm not a big fan of functional resumes. In your own company, you're a known commodity. So if you are applying for a job in your own company, you don't have to worry about as much about age discrimination. And I say that because of the dates that we're going to come in contact with. And so to avoid age discrimination, unless you graduated from college in the last, say, 8 to 10 years, do not put dates when you graduated. If you were in the military and you served in the Vietnam War, I don't want any dates. I just want you to say that you served 2 years or 4 years or 6 years, but I don't want any dates. So we have to be careful about that. So possibly no dates on education and probably no dates on military, but we do have to have dates for your employment because, again, that's the thing that's going to talk to me about the work stability. So if you're applying for a job in your own company, then the months are not so important. But if you are applying externally and someone who doesn't know you is going to be reading your resume, then the months when you started and ended a job are important. Because if, for example, if you just gave me that you worked from 2001 to 2002, you probably want me to think that you worked the whole 24 months. But what if you worked from 12 of 2001 to 1 of 2002, and that's 2 months? And so I want to know that you really were there 24 months or 18 months or however long it was. I don't want to assume you were there for 24 months, but you've actually hidden the fact that for 20 some odd months you were not employed. And you say, really, Dee, is that important? And I'm going to tell you, yes, it is. So get your months if you don't know when those were. So why is any employer in business? Well, it's basically to stay in business. And to do that, you have to make money. So from this point forward, for the rest of your careers, I want you to think about how can you help your potential new employer make money, save money, or avoid costs? How can you recover funds? How can you avoid safety violations and costly penalties? And also, if you have a safety violation, the company has to pay a lot of money in workers' compensation and possibly litigation. So if you can avoid safety violations, you are saving a lot of money and headaches. How can you create innovation? How can you develop new products to capture new markets? So here we have Elon Musk trying to do his Tesla car because he's trying to be innovative. We created the 787 at Boeing to be innovative. If you think about the woman who was a secretary at 3M Corporation who invented Post-it notes, and think about the new market that created, because we all use Post-it notes, but at the time when that was created about 30 years ago, that was an innovation and that brought in a lot of new revenue. So how can you increase profits or quality? Because if you increase your product quality, then you're increasing its life and its durability and its reputation, and that goes well to satisfied customers. How can you increase territory, customer base, market share, marketing opportunities? How do you increase your production or asset management or information access? So let's say you have 2 or 3 databases that you have to check for information. What if you merged them all together and you only had one database that you access? Think of all the time that would save, that you only have to access one database to get all the information that you want. If you're in management, and even if you're not, how do you minimize litigation or grievances? Because that costs money, that causes work stoppages. How do you reduce manpower costs, or I should say person power costs nowadays? How do you reduce overtime, rework, and repair? How can you decrease the cycle time of any process? And certainly when we want to get products to market, we want to get those products to market on time so that as soon as possible we can start generating revenue and we can make customers happy. How do you reduce errors and inefficiency, unnecessary spending? How can you maximize contract benefits because you are negotiating to purchase in bulk as opposed to individual little contracts? How can you streamline operations or improve efficiency? And I put this one in here because anybody can streamline operations, including people who are in secretarial and administrative positions, because sometimes they may not realize what the benefits or what some of their accomplishments are, and it probably might go to office efficiency. Let's see, how do you create benchmark operations? So you've got best practices that, again, increase efficiency. How do you assess a new company purchase for market expansion or greater revenues? So I want you to think about how you add value to your current company and how will you add value to any other company to which you apply for a job. Now, summary of qualifications versus the objective. Now, I've told you I don't personally like summary of qualifications because everybody sounds alike. But also, when I read a resume and it starts with a summary of qualifications, I may not necessarily know what job for which you're applying, and you make me guess. And you may say, but Dee, we're applying online and we're applying in a job basket, so you'll know what job we're applying for because it's in that job's job basket. Well, some of the smaller companies or the less sophisticated companies may not have that, and you may be applying for a mom and pop company. But whether or not you are, I think it's a good practice to just get used to having an objective. And so that will tell me what job that you are seeking, and I will know that right away, and then I can gauge your qualifications against what I know you're looking for and better evaluate that. Plus, if I know what job you're looking for, if I like your resume, I'm going to get your resume to the hiring manager because I want it off my desk, and that will help him or her make a quicker decision. So if you want to use the summary, normally you could use that if you're submitting to an electronic job basket, but I think it's just best to get used to having an objective. And I know that there are people out there that vehemently disagree with me, but I was recently talking to a former Boeing executive and then a friend of mine who is vice president of a premier travel company, and they both said, no, you absolutely have to have objectives. Okay, so let's see. In your objective, which is going to be the first thing that you see after your contact information. So obviously, you want people to know how to contact you because they're going to be so impressed with your resume, they're going to have to call you immediately. And by the way, because I recently was in a position to have to look at or want to look at some jobs, in 3 occasions, I sent my resume, which is in this format. I sent it out on a 4 o'clock on a Wednesday, and by 7:30 the next morning, I had someone calling me. Then I sent it out on another afternoon. I sent it off at about 3 o'clock, and at 4:15, somebody was calling me. And then about a month ago, I submitted something, and it happened to be to New Zealand, so I sent it off on a Wednesday evening, and by Sunday morning, I had an invitation for an interview. So I know that this works. The point of the resume is to get you the interview. It doesn't get you the job because you've got to interview well to get that job. But the point of the resume is to get you in. And I know this works because I'm 3 for 3 in people looking at my resume. So what I want in the objective is I've got to have 3 pieces of information, or let me say I prefer 3 pieces of information. So you tell me the position you want. You're going to give me 3 or 4 of your best skills that have something to do with the skills required in the job requisition that you're looking at. And then 3, you're going to tell me what you're going to do for the employer with those skills, keeping in mind that the reason anyone is in business is to make money to stay in business. Now, if you wanted an objective that simply said, here's the position I want, okay, so be it. But the advantage to saying, here's the position I want with the skills that I have, and here's what I'm going to do for you, is right from the get-go, you are employer-oriented. And I think there's an advantage to that, because that's the first thing they may see. And if you're employer oriented, then I think that goes a long way. So what are you going to do for the employer that helps that employer make money, save money, and avoid costs? Now I'm going to give you a quote by John F. Kennedy, and you're going, whoa, what a tangent here. Where's she going with this? That quote is, ask not what your country can do for you, but what can you do for your country? Well, replace the word country with company. Ask not what the company can do for you, but what can you do for the company? So how are you employer oriented? Because personally, if I'm the potential employer for you, I am very egocentric, and it's all about me. What are you going to do to help me? What are you going to do to help me make money, save money, and avoid costs? And you may have an objective that says you want to utilize your skills and grow with the company. Well, yay, good for you, but I am egocentric, and it's all about what are you going to do for me to keep me in business? So that's why I like an objective, is because I think it gets you oriented to tell the company what you are going to do for him or her, for it actually, right away. And so you're also talking about the results you can get, because you've said, here's what I can do for you, and here's the benefit that you're going to be able to surmise with me when I tell you what I'm going to do for you that has something to do with your making money. So that's all about results. So I've got some examples for you. Now, this is not the way it's going to look on the resume. I'm just breaking it down for you. So for instance, I need 3 things. The first thing I need is, what position do you want? Well, software support. Okay. Number 2, what skills do you have? Well, I have analysis, systems design, and mathematical aptitude. And number 3, what are you going to do for me, the potential new employer? What are you going to do for me with those skills? I'm going to create customized applications to ensure cost-efficient database management and reduce information access time. Ooh, that sounds appealing to me. You're telling me what you're going to do for me. If you create customized applications that are specific to me, I don't have to go through all those generic steps that don't apply to me and frustrate me and make it take longer. So definitely I would want that. So here's a generic one for an engineer. So number 2, skills says, I have engineering technology, I have graphic arts, and I have design. What are you going to do for the employer? I'm going to design state-of-the-art, cost-efficient products to affect a competitive edge. My goodness, state-of-the-art, innovation, new markets potentially, new customers, more revenues. It's exactly why Boeing invested in the 787, is because it was state-of-the-art aircraft, and they anticipated that it would earn them a whole lot of money. So Apple is very aware of this, state-of-the-art products that keep the public wanting what they put out for sale. So you want to be innovative. You want state-of-the-art products if you're an engineer. If you're in parts control, you have a very important job, and that's to keep the production operations running. So your skills may be forecasting, inventory management, and organization. What are you going to do for your potential new employer? I'm going to track those parts and manage those assets to reduce delays in the production line and ensure on-time product delivery to those customers. I'm going to keep that cycle time running, and our products will be delivered on the day we said they were going to be delivered, and that's going to keep the customer happy, which then maintains my customer base and also grows my customer base. Here's one on HR, and so because I have a number of these and I don't know what people are interested in, I'm just going to skip a couple, but they are as part of the program, and you can look. So now here's what it looks like on the resume. Here's how I craft it. Position as aircraft mechanic, and by the way, I did say that there are no full sentences, so actually it is a very terse kind of a get to the point phrase. And it's very staccato. And by the way, your computer's going to go fragment, fragment, fragment. Oh my gosh. Well, you don't care, because we are cutting to the case and eliminating unnecessary words. So position as aircraft mechanic, utilizing expertise in analysis, blueprint interpretation, and precision drilling to ensure quality, reliability, and cost efficiency in product lines. Now, again, if you think about Boeing mechanic who's working on a plane, don't you want a reliable plane? I mean, who in the world wants to ride in a plane that might not have been crafted so well? Excuse me. Here's one as Director of Public Relations or Community Relations, utilizing expertise. And you'll notice I always use that word, or most always use that word, because it's a very subliminally positive word. So community relations with expertise in writing, advertising, and community media relations to create professional promotional communications to optimize media for expanded business. So you're trying to promote your business, make it appealing. Here's a position in finance, utilizing expertise in analysis, planning, and organization to manage costs and ensure compliance to the budget. People care about that. Stay on budget. My money has to be used well and according to plan. If you're in a position in career and occupational health nursing, number 2 question, utilizing skills in analysis, patient care, and surveillance. What are you going to do for that employer, potentially a hospital, to decrease medical expenditures and employee lost time on the job? You don't want them hurt. You want them doing the right things. We don't want any back ailments. We don't want any falls. We want people to be taking the right meds. Executive assistant, so if you are an administration or a secretarial or something, you might utilize skills in organization, communication, and client relations to create marketing packages to generate ongoing interest in such and so program funding. A lot of secretaries and administration people put packages together for their managers to make presentations. Here's business development. There's a shorter one that I'll talk about. Auto mechanic. I don't know how many of you are auto mechanics, but I'm going to skip it. Let's see. Well, it's actually, I won't, because it's a good example of why somebody would care about your skills as an auto mechanic. So utilizing expertise in diagnostics, analysis, and auto parts to ensure safety and efficiency in repair services. I want them to know what they're doing when they work on my car. Now here's the shorter one for business development. And by the way, having worked for Boeing so long, there were a lot of engineers that when they were looking for a job, they were pretty myopic and thinking, oh, I have to go be another engineer. But Boeing Company buys a lot of engineering companies. Who best than an engineer to know if the engineering company we're considering acquiring is really good at what they do? Are their products worthwhile? Are they making them the right way? And engineers can figure that out, so they have a different venue that they can go down when looking for jobs, at least in that industry. Now, that's not always true, but I felt that at Boeing, engineers could be really instrumental in determining which companies we buy. So here's an objective for position in business development, utilizing expertise in forecasting, risk assessment, and strategic planning to gauge optimal investment ventures. Do we want to put our money here? Is this a good investment? Do we think that we can make some profits? Procurement agent or purchasing, utilizing expertise in inventory management, contract language, and forecasting to create sole source providers for rare parts to ensure critical parts availability for continued production operations. Again, since I worked for Boeing, when we were embarking upon making the 787, we needed titanium, and titanium was a very critical commodity that was hard to get. So if you were good enough at procurement that you were able to keep that titanium flowing so that the production operations continued to go, and you didn't have any work stoppages, then that was a wonderful thing. Here's my last example, and I wrote this for Houston, where they were doing the shuttle program and they were doing space station. So position as a thermodynamic systems analyst, utilizing answering question 2, expertise in mechanical engineering, computer simulation, thermal environmental design and technologies applications to do what? Assess launch capability to ensure mission success. That's all they did in Houston, and that's what they cared about. So right from the get-go, you are telling your potential new employer, here's what I can do for you. So that's it about objectives. So now again, we have to choose our categories, and we want to lead from strength. And by the way, I don't say work history or job experience. I call it career progression, because that implies that a person has progressed or gotten more education or gotten more responsibility, that somebody trusted him or her to do more and better work. So it's a subliminal positive, again, to call it career progression. So after your objective, because that's always coming first. After that is when you choose your category. So do you want to choose career progression first, or do you think your education would be more impressive toward what the job rec says that it wants? And when you're looking at the job requisition, they have a problem. That they need someone to do these things. You want to be the solution. So as you look at the rec, you want to embed some of the words and phrases into your resume so that it really looks like, hey, you need this? I've been doing this for 5 years. You need that? Well, I got a degree in it. You need something else? Well, it's something I did as a project in my last job. So problem that you have, and I'm the solution. So you pick your categories according to what you think the reader will find most impressive against the requisition verbiage. And so usually my first 3 categories could be either career progression, it could be education. Now, it might be military if somebody's coming out of the military, and he or she could have been in the military for the last 8 years or 16 years. And you can set up your military category as the same as career progression. You can say, I worked for this entity, here was my job title, here are my duties using action verbs, and here are my major accomplishments, which we're going to get to. So I'm just saying, well, which of your categories will become in what sequence? If you have a security clearance and you're working in an industry that cares about that, so it might be a government entity, it certainly could be somebody in aerospace, it could be Elon Musk's Tesla, it could be Richard Branson's Virgin Air. If they care about security clearance and you have an active one, I would tell you to put it as your first category. And it's going to be a one-liner. It's going to say security clearance, top secret, active. And that's going to be all it is. Now, if you had a security clearance and it's lapsed, you can choose to put it first or last. It's more important if it's current, because if it's lapsed, I still have to spend time and money to get you recertified. But if you have an active security clearance, and again, it's in an industry that cares about that, then I would say after your objective, security clearance will be first as a category. Okay, so leading from strength, which categories do you come? Now, I'm not telling you to do this, but I have to start somewhere. So I'm going to start with the career progression category because it's my meatiest category that I have to talk about. So please don't misunderstand. I am not telling you that your career progression needs to come first or second. You have to decide that. But I have to start somewhere. So let's say that on my resume, I start with career progression as my first category after my objective. Now, you always start with the job that you're in right now, and you work backwards. And you're going to include all the dates for your jobs. Now, if you're applying externally to the company for which you work now, and I was in aerospace, so that could have been to Raytheon Lockheed, but it could be to a mom and pop company, doesn't matter. Then either way, I suggest you reflect about 12 years, but if you're internal, if you really wanted to do more than that, if you wanted to do 20, then you could. I don't always advocate that, especially if it's external. Internal, you could because you're the known commodity. But when you are going to be submitting your resume to people who don't know you, to avoid age discrimination, I'm going to tell you to reflect about 12 years. But maybe you have a nice break in service at 14 years, or maybe it's 15 years. And if you apply to some of the aerospace companies, I think they do want to see 20 years. So obviously you want to give them 20 years because that's what they require. But I'm worried about age discrimination for a lot of my populations that I work with. So I tell you, you only need to reflect about 12 years. Now, what if you say, Dee, but 30 years ago, I had this great job and I haven't worked in it in a long time, but that's what I want to go back to 30 years later. How do I reflect that I have this background? Well, I'm going to tell you, well, 30 years ago, your industry's probably changed, but if you really, really want to talk about some background you had, then create a new category and call it additional expertise and you're going to say you worked for this company as a such and so, but you're not going to give any dates. No dates, because it was way too long ago. And all you're trying to do is let people know, well, I used to do that a long time ago, and that's why I'm coming back into this industry that I left such a long time ago. But that doesn't happen for everyone. So if that's your case, that you want to go back to something you used to do a long time ago, I don't want any dates, but create a new category that says additional expertise, and you can list the companies and list your job title, and maybe you even give a couple of duties, but I don't want you to list dates. So remember, external reflect about 12-ish years. It might be 14, it might be 11. I wouldn't say less than 11. Might be 11. It could be 16, somewhere in there. But I really don't want your whole work history, because then people are going to think that they know how old you are. They may not figure it out correctly, but they think they know how old you are. And that's all that is needed to discriminate against you. So as I've said, pay attention to the language in the job rec. You want to be the solution to the problem they've listed. In your job description, list only the most pertinent jobs in the description. So sometimes maybe that's 6 to 8 things. I've had people tell me 19 things, including that you attended meetings or you reviewed presentations. I don't know, maybe reviews, presentations could be important in a certain job. In other jobs, not so important. I don't need to know it. And I certainly don't need to know that you attend meetings. So you really, on this resume, which can only be 2 pages, you've got to cut to the chase. You have to be very succinct about what you put on that page and maximize that space. So we want to list your pertinent jobs, and we're going to use action verbs. We're going to say that, and remember, there's no full sentences. So your sentence starts with a verb. You created, you designed, you designated, you constructed, you analyzed, you documented, you diagnosed. That's how you start your sentences, with verbs, because there's a lot of energy in that. And you're going to want to tell me significant tasks. So, by the way, let's say you manage a budget. Tell me how much money, and don't put it near the end. If you are managing a budget, that's a pretty important thing, because it has something to do with money. So put it toward the front, because people tend to look at your front tasks first. They may skip some of the others, because remember, you only got 28 seconds for somebody to scan this. And how do these tasks align with the tasks needed in the requisition? So if you have things that you've done that are directly applicable to that requisition, that's what you want in there. You don't need to list all 97. It says, remember to include promotions. So it might look like this. You might, under your career progression, you're going to list the name of the company for whom you worked. And so maybe it's St. Jude's Hospital. And then you're going to say that you are an attendant, or you were a registered nurse, or you were this, or you were that. If you got promoted, at the end of the job title, put period, promotion, period. And then in your job description, you can tell me about the jobs that you did for before you were promoted and after. Or tell me promotion and then list what you did in the promotion, and then you can say pre-promotion, you could say what your job duties were. I think you can combine them, because it's a better way to save space. But do tell me that you got promoted. Okay, so here's some verbs: develop, facilitate, consult, perform, mediate, coach, ghostwrite. So here's some ineffective phrases. I mentioned duties included, responsibilities were. Nope, 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 don't do it. I also hate the word supported. You supported something. What does that mean? Were you getting coffee for people who were doing stuff? Were you watching? Or did you actually do it? So if you do it, I want my verb. If you do it, give me that you created and you designed and you tested. You corrected anomalies. I want to know that you did it. Supported, I have no idea whether you did or didn't do it. Same thing with participated in. Were you watching? Is that how you participated? Assisted in? No. You say, but Dee, I assisted because I didn't do it alone. I recognize that space station was not built by one person. So you can say as team member, comma, and then I want my verb. Now, I told you I want you to be in verb format, and every now and then somebody tries to sneak in a noun, like I'm a liaison or a focal. Nope, that's a noun. So if I'm going to put you in verb format, I'm going to put acted as, a liaison. Performed as focal, because I've got to keep you in verb format. So I also hate the verb interface. We're interfacing. Okay, wonderful. Some more powerful verbs are consulted, advised. If you consulted, it implies that somebody wanted your opinion. Why did they want your opinion? Oh, you must have been knowledgeable. Maybe you were a subject matter expert. So you consulted or you advised. If you're in management or you're a project manager or a lead, maybe you authorized. And then everybody loves the verb collaborated because a lot of companies are working in teams. So they love that verb. Now, you could say liaised. That's a verb. A lot of people say liaison, and that's a noun. So if you're going to say liaison, remember I'm going to say acted as liaison because I need to keep you in verb format. But you could say liaised, which to me is just a funny word. Yeah. Doesn't mean you can't use it, though.
Oh, do you want to hold off on maybe?
So you don't have to include every minute task. Just say 6 to 9 of the most important ones, depending upon the language in the rec. Why such a minimalist view of this job? I want employers to know everything I did. Well, remember that the point of the resume is to get you an interview. When you interview, you can tell people whatever you want because you'll have some time to do that. But on paper, with this 28 seconds and I got to cut to the chase and I have to look efficient, then I want the minimalist view and you tell me the most important things. Because I really want room for something else that's going to make you stand out because there are 400 to 500 applicants for each job, or there could be. So how are you going to stand out among the other 499 people who are applying for the same jobs you are? Well, I have the answer to that, and it's all about results. So on your resume, after you have listed your job description, you're going to skip a space and you are going to put on the resume the words major accomplishments. And then you are going to tell me what those are. So here's how it lines up on the resume. Oh, and by the way, you only have to go back about 6-ish years for accomplishments because anything older than that is going to be archaic and I'm going to go, what have you done lately? Unless you did something so phenomenal that you saved millions of dollars 25 years ago, then maybe we'll figure out how to put that in. But really, 25 years ago, you had a phenomenal accomplishment. Well, what have you done lately? Because you can't live on your laurels for 24 more years. So, major accomplishments. So, you're going to have your job entry with your description. You're going to skip a space. You're going to say major accomplishments for this job. When you finish your accomplishments, you're going to skip a space. You're going to put the name of the company you worked for before you worked at this job. You're going to put on the next line, you are going to put your job title. On the next line after that, you're going to describe the job. You're going to skip a space, and then you're going to put major accomplishments. So I want your major accomplishments with each job entry. I don't want a major category that says major accomplishments because I want to know that your accomplishments are current. And if you create a category of major accomplishments, I may not be able to figure out when you did them. And I want to know that they are current. And this is what I want in your accomplishment statement. I have to have all three things. What did you do? How did you do it? And what were your results? And so let me tell you why this is important. It's important because I need to know what it was you did, but can you do it again or was it a fluke? And if you tell me how you did it, then I know you do have knowledge of being able to replicate your success. And then what your results. Why would you do something unless you were getting good results, or at least you were trying to figure out how to get good results? So results help the company make money, save money, avoid costs. How do you create innovation? How do you keep your customer base? Those are going to make you distinguishable from your competition because it's about your contributions, your value to the company. And this is about you. This is not about the job rec. Because all of you who are applying for the same job, you probably did all the same things in the jobs you did, and you're going to sound alike when you describe the job and the things you did. But these accomplishments are specific to you. So why do results matter? Because it's all about keeping that company in business. So here is an accomplishment for, let's say, somebody like me who is a consultant. So what did you do? Facilitated offsite meeting. How did you do it? You created customized agenda to educate and mesh both parties' interests. The results were improved relations between customer and supplier with potential yield of add-on business and increased revenue. So what this was a while ago, the Department of Defense was working with one of the organizations in aerospace, and they had some communication problems. And once we educated each side about here's the process we have to use and why, then they both understood each other. They figured out, okay, how can we get around the bottlenecks? And then when they figured out how to work around the bottlenecks, oh, okay, so now things will go more smoothly. And as long as we are operating with this company and it's going smoothly, then we'll certainly do some add-on business. Okay, so here's a major accomplishment, and I generally, when I write them, I do 2, 1, 3. I do my hows first. By doing X, Y, Z, here's what we did and here's what the results were. I like the results last because it's the last thing they read in that phrase. So, implemented SPC method and performed root cause analysis, being enabling measurement of, or we measured rework and repair hours and defects, resulting in improved quality, reducing rework and repair hours from 2,000 to 350, resulting in reduced costs. Now, if you went down 1,650 hours, there's a cost with that. If you know that your employees earn $30 an hour and you reduced 1,650 hours times 30, you can have a very tangible cost savings that we don't always know what our cost savings are. If you avoid litigation, you don't know tangibly how much money you saved, but I can tell you, you saved hundreds of thousands. So where you can have a tangible, measurable, and documented result, the better. So remembering why companies in business, again, is to make money. So how are you reducing test errors? How are you improving efficiency? How are you increasing productivity, utilizing all your assets? That's what you want as far as thinking about, what's my value? So here's a job description for Director Prod Ops, and here are the verbs. So implemented, managed a budget, provided business strategy or strategized, performed personnel functions. So you can tell me you performed personnel functions such as hiring, recruitment, performance management, and training, and then I know what you did. And you can tell me that you managed 17 people, but you don't have to say that you managed 5 engineers, 3 analysts, 2 parts control, and 7 so-and-so. You don't have to, just tell me that you managed 17 people. And if you want to talk to me about personnel functions such as, you can do that, because then I know what you're capable of doing. So major accomplishments. Now this is not how it, the first bullet is how it looks on the page. The last 3 bullets, I'm just breaking it down for you. So in this example, what did they do? They streamlined production operations. How they do it? They introduced lean manufacturing. Result was reduced production delays and improved corrective action by 53 hours. So they were getting things fixed earlier, which helps the production line, which helps get the product to market. So here's one. So with immediate co-location of functional personnel, eliminated redundant support personnel amounting to cost savings of $1 million per annum. So you can see in the top, which is how it looks on the resume, I'd start with how, then I do the what, and then I do the result. So it's 2, 1, 3. It's just easier for me to do it that way. Another job description with verbs. So negotiated, interviewed, hired, conducted. Major accomplishment, and if you're in management, maybe this applies to you. So through collaboration and fair problem solving, this is the how. Here comes the what. We settled X amount of % of union grievances, and then the result, minimizing dollar loss through avoidance of litigation and arbitration and corresponding costs. So again, depending upon how long you've occupied your job, you might want to have 2 to 4 major accomplishments. If you've only been in the job less than a year, you might have 1 or you might not have any. If you don't have any because you've been in the current job such a short time, then go to the job you had before and think of those accomplishments. And remember, you only have to go back about 6 years. A lot of people want to talk about awards they got. Well, good for you, but make sure that they are company oriented. Some people say, oh, I got a promotion. That's an accomplishment. Yes, it's your accomplishment. Does the company care about that necessarily? How does that translate to your helping them make money, save money, and avoid costs? So maybe you have your personal awards category. I would say, no, but Maybe it's an accomplishment that if you can prove how when you got a promotion, you were able to institute all kinds of different processes that earned money, then go for it. So it's all about results, and that's what's so powerful, and this is about you. This distinguishes you from the competition. So now you got to choose your next resume category. It probably could be education, but maybe it's computer proficiency or computer expertise, or maybe it's military. And as I mentioned, you can set up military-like career progression. You can say you were in the military and you were this job and these dates, and here's your action verbs to describe the job, and here's your major accomplishments. Or you can have a very short military category, which I'll tell you about. So education, it might be a strong category without a degree depending upon the job. So degrees doesn't necessarily mean strong categories. So mechanics at Boeing were very, very educated because of all the certs they had to have. They had forklift, they had blueprint interpretation, they had soldering, they had hazardous materials handling, they had electrical wiring, they had all kinds of certs. So just because they didn't have a degree does not mean they did not have a strong education category. So it just depends. Finance, engineering, healthcare, they probably want degrees. But some of the other ones, if you're in purchasing or if you are in parts control, inventory management, if you're in administration, if you're in sales and marketing, maybe they don't care so much about degrees. So don't forget that some of the classes you took can come under your education category. Maybe you have lots of certifications. You have an AP Power license. Those are education. And also computer classes are education that can go in the education category. So if you have gotten your degree within 5 to 8 years, then you can leave on the dates. But if your degree is older than, say, 8 to 10 years, don't put the dates on. I do say put your GPA on if it's better than a B, but you got to tell me that it's 3.0 out of 4.0 or 4.0 out of 5.0, because now a 3.0, if the school's on a 5.0 scale, you're doing a C. You don't want people to know that you did average work. You want people to know that you did good work. And you say, really, Dee, my GPA is so old. It's from 25 years ago. Use everything to your advantage. If you've got good GPA, hey, it doesn't hurt to put it. Just make sure that it's true. If you didn't do well in undergraduate school and you got a degree, you did well later, but not so much in undergraduate school, then just leave all the GPAs off, because they're going to wonder, well, you got this GPA for your master's, where's your GPA for your undergrad? And you don't want to tell them that you went to the party school and you surfed and you got a 1.4 average. Okay, so computer savvy, again, you can make it computer proficiency if you're pretty good, and computer expertise if you're really good. So let's see. I think I've told you that. Oops, sorry. Okay, if you are currently enrolled in a degree program, if you're half the way there, you can say that you have completed 50 of 100 units because you have a lot of energy directed toward that degree. If you've only completed a couple of classes, you can say you're at so-and-so college, you've completed 3 classes towards a degree in psych or whatever degree. You can put proposed graduation date if you want. You don't have to. You can put your GPA, and you can say Dean's List 2 semesters. So you can still capture your education even though you don't have a degree. If you have licenses or training, again, as I mentioned, you can put them under education. So other resume categories could be community service and hobbies. And I'm going to tell you, if you have space for that, maybe put it. In community service, you might want to share some of the skills you have honed that have nothing to do with the job you're in. But again, if you are applying for a company that wants you to do a lot of different things, some companies like Boeing or bigger ones say, we have people to do just A, we have people to do just B, and we have people to do just C. But some companies want you to do A, B, C, and by the way, can you do E and D and E too? So if maybe you have some skills that you got in community service that lend themselves to a greater plethora of things that they want you to do, then maybe that's a good thing. But don't do hobbies and community service at the expense of the other more important categories. Now, professional affiliations is professional. Church would come under some community service. Patents and publications. I had a gentleman who said, Dee, I've got 65 patents and publications. Can I list them all? Nope. On a separate sheet, you can list them all. And if somebody says, do you have a list of all your patents and publications? You can go, yes, I do. Here they go. But on the resume, you're going to, under patents and publications category, you're going to say, have 65 patents and publications under the topic of A, B, C, and D. So you can mention it, but it's not going to take up so much space on the page. Special skills is normally what I mean is bilingualism or trilingualism. You're able to talk to people in other foreign languages, so you talk to more people than most of us. So military, your category can be as short as U.S. Army, 4 years, honorable discharge. So that's all it has to be if you have military. Or as I said, you can list it like it's a career progression. That's your call. But just remember about the 2 pages. So I've talked about professional. Let's see, church is going to be under community service. Talk to you about that. Why would you want to include community service? Well, I mentioned that there's different job skills that can be reflected, but also because some people think that it's really good you're involved in the community. Now, here was a woman under community service who wrote this, and later I thought, I think we could address parent discrimination, because she wrote a first aid manual for her son's scout troop. Now, I would say for local scout troop. I don't want her to claim a child. And you say, really, Dee, is there parental discrimination? And I hope not, but I think there are people who say, you have kids, they're going to need you. When they're sick, you won't be at work, and I need someone here all the time. So I would just say we're not going to talk about her son's scout troop. We're going to talk about local scout troop. Who knows? Maybe they hired her to write a first aid manual and she doesn't have kids. But I'm just saying I want you to avoid what could be parental discrimination. And so community service, if you work at your church and you are a Bible school teacher, that's teaching. If you're a deacon, I think you handle money. You might be doing fundraisers, so don't you want people to know about your organization skills or your marketing skills or your communication skills? So again, all of those lend themselves to your total package as an employee. So if you have room, you can include the community service category, but as I say, not at the expense of the other more important categories. Let's see, I said that. So special skills could be photography, music, consulting. Be careful about consulting. You want to make sure there's not a conflict of interest. And some companies view consulting when you already have a full-time job. They could say, wow, what initiative? Or they could say, are we really getting our money's worth? Are you working on our dime for our company? Or are you doing your own consulting work while you're on the company dime? So be careful. You probably should be able to gauge whether your company is going to be excited about that. And again, depending upon if there's any conflicts of interest. But if you're working in healthcare and you're selling Mary Kay cosmetics on the side, that might not necessarily be a conflict of interest. But be careful about consulting. And so, as I say, hobbies category, not that I recommend it, but sometimes if you feel like you don't have enough information and you'd like to fill it out, then maybe you can say things like tennis, golf, sailing, camping, things that people normally do. If you are doing hobbies that are going to kill you, then don't tell me that, because I'm going to figure, whoa, you're not going to be live long enough for me to reap enough benefit out of hiring you. So be careful about that. No motorcycle, bungee jumping kind of thing. At least that's my recommendation. So you don't have to end your resume with references available upon request, because that's going to be on a separate sheet with 1 personal reference and 1 to 3 business references of people who were in a position to grade your work. But references available upon request and labeling it resume are very useless uses of spaces. I'm going to recognize what a resume is, so you don't have to label it. And I know you have references, and you're going to have them on a separate sheet so that when I ask you for them, you're going to be ready and go, yeah, here they are. So you want your space because you want to talk about the important job duties you did. You want to talk about your major accomplishments. You want to talk about your education, military, and as I said, give me a military category if you've been a veteran. It does not promise you an interview or a job, but it means that I have to scrutinize very carefully what your conditions and what your qualifications are, and I don't know to do that if you have not put military category on there. So use your space for the important things. So I hope that in this hour-long session, I've explained to you not only what you need to put on your resume, but why you put it on there, so that you'll understand how this lends itself to marketing yourself to be the best applicant. So use your space well. Think about your accomplishments. I know a lot of people say, oh, I don't have any. Yes, you do. Just think about it, because there's only been one person in 10,000 that came back to me and said, I don't have any accomplishments, when I told her, go back and think about it. So I want you to start thinking about this all the time, and why am I doing this, and what's the value, and how does this help the company, how does it help the continuation of the business. So a results-oriented resume can reap great results. So thank you very much for this session. And Steve, I see it is 1 o'clock and time to end. Thanks for having me.
Well, it is time to end, and you did a wonderful job. But everybody has hung in. I've been looking at the participant list, so there may be some questions out there.
Okay.
And if there are, I know you'll be happy to answer them. So
Yes.
we're going to open the mics, and if somebody wants to share a comment or ask a question, we'll encourage them to do it at 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
I had a question with regards to objective versus the summary style. So say you're applying to job boards like Monster or some of these other ones, and you don't know specifically what the job position is that you were applying for. You make the objective generic enough, it's like a manager position as opposed to a specific manager position?
Yeah, so if I understand you correctly, the question is, what if I don't really know the job? It might be like an investigative kind of query into a company. And so you might have to have a couple of different resumes, and one is generic, so you want to be, let's see, a gaming analyst for Blizzard, or you want to be in management, and this, yes, it can be very generic. Like my engineering one was pretty generic when I had that objective up. But again, be ready to have a different resume if you want to apply for a specific job that comes up. But I still think you can have enough skills generically, whether it's customer relations or it's communications or it's leadership or it's technical capability. And what you would always want to do for a company generically is to grow its product line or its customer base, or increase its profit, or increase its visibility to customers. I mean, there's enough generic information that I think you could do that. Does that make sense? Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Who else has a question?
Hey Dee, I have a question for you. I jumped in just a few minutes late, but I wanted to ask about the 2 pages thing. I've never heard for anybody to have more than 1 page if you don't have up to 10 years experience, or you have a master's degree or something like that. So even with, I can see how you can justify with the results oriented, the how, the what, the results kind of format, but is it really good for somebody to have 2 pages if they're like an undergrad, or they've only had 5 to 8 years or something like that?
Yep. Absolutely, it's okay. But yeah, it goes back to the relevance of what you're having me read. So if you have a lot of background in it, maybe you have a lot of education you want to tell me, or you have several accomplishments and it goes over 1 page, absolutely, it's fine. I just don't want fluff in the 2 pages. So it's perfectly fine. And because I think at the beginning I said 3 times I've applied for jobs with a 2-page resume, and I got a response within an hour and a half on one occasion, and by the next morning I submitted it at 4, and by 7:30 the next day I had a request to call. And then to New Zealand I submitted it Wednesday, and by Sunday morning I had Wednesday evening, and by Sunday morning somebody wanted an interview, and they were all 2 pages. So yes, it's fine.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, who else?
Can we get a copy of this?
Yeah, I have copies I can get you.
Okay,
I
great.
took your notes.
As part of this program here, could we send our resumes once we've implemented some of the suggestions for critique?
I wish you could, but I'm expensive. So what I do for NMA is the presentation. If I offered that to everybody, then I would have a flood of resumes. And so now that I'm retired, it's for a fee. But if you wanted to do that, get in touch with Steve and he could give you my contact info.
All right, thanks.
When you say 2 pages, you mean front and back, right? Not 2 separate pages.
No, I do mean 2 separate pages. I would never tell you to do front and back. I know we want to save trees. I'm old school. I just want it to be as professional as possible. So 2 different separate pages.
That was a great question, because I think most of us are used to front and back. So yeah, I'm glad we all hung in there for that question. Anybody else? It doesn't have to be a great question, just a question. Going once? Going twice? Well, we've only lost one person. So, Dee, I want to thank you. This resume writing is always popular. Some of you may know Dee did it about 4 years ago, and I couldn't believe it was that long ago, actually. And we always have requests for it. So I want to thank her for doing a really good job. To me, a really good webinar gives you a lot of things to think about, and some of which are head scratchers. So you did that, and you did it well, and it was fun. And you'll see I sent you an email. Somebody from your morning class has a suggestion for another webinar, a topic of yours that you happen to mention. So I forwarded it on to you. If you're interested, we'll talk.
Okay, absolutely.
So I want to thank you, Dee. You did not have to do this for us. You're very kind, and you do it very, very well. And we are eternally grateful for what you've shared with us. So
My pleasure, Steve. Happy to do it.
all right. So I wish you and everyone a good evening. And for those of you, especially working 980s, I can say have a nice weekend. So take care, and we'll see you next month.